Gallup is out with a new poll on the issue of terrorism and civil liberties, and let's just say the tide has turned. So it wasn't that long ago that if you asked the American people, do you want security or do you want liberty? They're like, not really sure. In fact, it was just after the Boston bombing where, according to some polls from some agencies, it was flipped, where the American people were like, yeah, take my metadata, spy on me, I don't care, I got nothing to hide, do it. So that was disturbing, and I remember covering those stories and coming out here and going fucking bonkers, because it just shows you how quickly attitudes of the public can change and how little people give a shit about their constitutional rights in some respects. So that was then. What are the numbers now, and what's the general attitude in the country today? Well, let's go ahead and look at the first chart here. Again, this is from Gallup, and they asked, or they said, Americans' views of trade-offs between anti-terrorism efforts and respecting civil liberties. So you have today, just 30% of the American people say, take all steps necessary to prevent terrorism, even if civil liberties are violated. Just 30% say that. 65% say, take steps to prevent terrorism, but not violate civil liberties. Now, you can see there clearly, if you go back to 2002, obviously in the post-9/11 era, or directly after 9/11, I should say, you see that it was much, much, much closer. Now, again, I want to stress, there are some polls that are even worse than this, and they're worse than this recently, where the American people are like, forget my civil liberties, I got nothing to hide, you could spy on me, no problem. But here you see, at least according to Gallup, it was worse right after 9/11, and it was the worst right after 9/11, and then slowly but surely, and actually, that's not even fair to say, rather quickly, by 2004, we kind of spread out to 65%, 30%, and the American people say, yeah, you can't violate civil liberties in order to protect from terrorism. Now, again, you might look at that and say, that's overwhelming and that's good overall for the American people, but let's face it, there are certain segments of the population that are worse on this. Specifically, Republicans. Well, we have some data on that too. Take a look at this next chart. Whoa. You gotta give credit where credit is due, man. The Republicans do even better than the entire country. Because it's 66% of Republicans, while it's 65% for the entire country that say, prevent terrorism but don't violate civil liberties. It's 66% for Republicans. And 29% say, take all steps necessary even if you have to violate my civil liberties. Now, again, you go back to 2002 and, just before 2003 there, as you can see, the Republicans had flipped. It was 52% say, do whatever, even violate civil liberties to stop terrorism. Only 45% say, don't violate civil liberties. So there has been a flip there, and now they're definitely on the right side of the issue. And, yeah, you can say that some of this has to do with what president is in office. I mean, towards the end of Bush's time in office, they were better on this issue, and they were like, stop violating civil liberties. But yeah, under Obama, it has gotten more like, I don't want government spying in on me, man. We got a black Democrat as president. Can't have that. If it's a white guy, maybe, but not a black guy. Come on now. So yeah, that might play a little role in this. But understand, I'm going to take it a step further here. It doesn't fucking matter what anybody thinks about this. Now, the first thing that may come to your mind is, well, that's a ridiculous thing to say, Kyle. Don't you always talk about democracy and how important that is and how politicians should care what the people think? That's all absolutely true. But on this specific issue, it doesn't matter because it's a constitutional issue. That's the whole point of the Constitution. If we took a poll tomorrow and 90% of the American people say we should teach Christianity as an option in the science class, I would say, take a fucking hike. I don't give a shit what you think. This is a constitutional issue. We have a separation of church and state. State in this case being the government. You can't put religion into the state, into the schools. So that's a constitutional issue where it doesn't matter if 100% of people in society say, I want X. Doesn't matter if you want X. The whole point of a constitution is you draw hard lines where you say you can't cross that. You just can't do it. Same thing with freedom of speech. if you polled the American people today, I'm sure a majority of them would say, you shouldn't be allowed to take a shit on a cross like it's art. A Jesus cross, you shit on it, or you pee on it, or whatever, or you burn the American flag. This was an issue, I think, back in the 70s or the 80s, there was a Supreme Court case about this, where the majority of people were like, oh, how dare you besmirch the legacy of the great United States. You can't burn the flag, you're going to jail. Most people agreed, send that guy to jail. Well, the Supreme Court said, take a fucking hike. It doesn't matter if 100% of you say the person should be in jail for burning the flag. It is a right. It is a constitutional issue, not a democratic issue. Same thing with your, right to privacy and your protection from unreasonable search and seizure. Even if you say, go ahead, government, take all my metadata, even though I'm not part of any terrorism investigation and I'm not, a threat. It doesn't matter if you say, come look at it. They shouldn't be able to. It's that simple. Unless they have evidence and they get a warrant and they think you're involved in terrorism, then they can do it. So, these are good numbers. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that we've now come around and we're saying civil liberties, yay! But it's not even really necessary to do the polling because it doesn't fucking matter what some jackasses believe. The bottom line is, it is a constitutional right for a reason. I believe it was a founding father who said, give me liberty or give me death.